So they have this superfluous amount of chicken.
Oh. How many do you have on Argon?
Just the 4.
Oh, you only have 4?
That's all that you're permitted.
Oh, I see. Oh, I understand.
Good evening, all. It is 7 p.m. Tuesday, June 14th, and I will call to order the regular meeting of the Millwood City Council. At this time, the agenda has us doing the Pledge of Allegiance. Let us welcome this evening our newest council member, Kelly Stravens. Mr. Stravens is appointed to fill the remainder of Kate McLaughlin's position and was sworn in prior to this meeting. So we have seated Mr. Stravens. Kelly, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance tonight?
I will. Thank you, Mayor, and I'm happy to be here. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. So, Lisa, you want to take attendance, or you want me to roll down the attendance?
I'll take the attendance.
Oh, I thought you were training. The clerk will now take the attendance tonight.
Mayor Freeman,
Present.
Councilmember Beasy,
Present.
Councilmember Culler,
Present.
Councilmember Van Hees,
Present.
Councilmember Sander, Councilmember Stravens.
Present.
Thank you.
We have a quorum tonight. Mr. Sander is missing in action tonight, but we do have 4 members present. So tonight, I would look for a motion on approval of tonight's agenda, but we do have one edit. The presentation, item 6, the presentation for the Argonne widening by Welch-Comer. There's nothing really to report, and Mr. Gillis and the engineers had a prior commitment tonight, so we are not having item number 6 this evening. So do I have a motion on tonight's amended agenda?
I make a motion to amend the agenda, omitting number 6 and proceeding accordingly.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? Seeing or hearing none from the council, all in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none opposed, the agenda is amended and approved for tonight. Thank you very much. That brings us
As a
to
reminder, please remember to turn on your microphone and speak into it. Thank you.
Or we do have enough capability for the council members simply to leave their microphones on. If you wish, you may leave your microphone open.
I don't think you want that.
And just listening to you mutter under your breath the whole night. So that brings us to item number 5, our Spokane Valley Fire Department report. Chief?
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, council members. Good evening, city officials. We're happy to come here this evening to provide you our year-to-date and May response numbers for Millwood. Next slide, please. There you go. So for the month of May, we had 35 emergency 911 calls. Next slide, please. Of those 35 responses, of those 35 incident call-outs, we had 29 responses. Next slide, please. The top 5 calls for the month of May, 4 sick calls, followed by 4 motor vehicle accidents, 2 31 unconscious calls, 2 32 unknown calls, and 1 difficulty breathing call. So 77% of our calls were for EMS. Next slide, please. Year to date, we've had 124 911 calls, and those have, next slide, please, have required 102 responses. So again, the responses don't generally add up to the incident call-outs due to there being fire calls or cancellations, things of that nature. So they generally don't match, so which is normal. Next slide. Currently, year-to-date, our number one call is 32 unknowns. And again, just so we know, a 32 unknown is just the MPDS EMS call coding. We do know what it is. It is a known call. It's just the way that we label the nature of the incident. So it's just somebody who's down, but we don't know why they're down. Followed by 8 sick calls, 731 unconscious calls, 7 psych calls, and 5 difficulty breathing calls. So a total of 86% of our calls are for EMS, which matches up with the rest of the response areas.
Do those, can you go back one? Do those EMS calls that are listed, do those constitute basic life support or advanced life support, or is that a determination you make in the field?
Actually, it's actually made initially from the 911 call. So when the caller calls, goes to the PSAP center, they answer it and ask what's going on, what's the call. From that determination, they'll dispatch it as an ALS call, advanced life support, or BLS call, basic life support. When we get there, generally, we could even go, you know what, this is really an ALS call, send me an ALS unit. Or, hey, this is a BLS call, we got this, rest of the units can cancel. So it's all dependent on what we see when we get there as well. So these calls are all mixed in together because each one of those designations, so 32 unknown, 26 sick, 31 unconscious, 25 psych, 6 difficulty breathing. Each one of those are broken into Alpha, Bravo, Charlie, and Delta. And so the Alpha and Bravo calls are BLS responses, and the Charlie and Delta calls are ALS calls, so coded responses. So it would come in as, if it came in as a 32 Delta, then we would know that it's a 32 unconscious patient for unknown reason, but it's an ALS call, they're dying or possibly dying. So that's a lot to it, so, but yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Next slide, please. So right now, this is our total calls year to date. The biggest thing I wanted to show you here was if you go halfway down, you see that 31 ABT and 31 CDE. The 31 ABT are our alpha calls, Alpha Bravo, BLS calls, and the 31 Charlie Delta Echo calls are our ALS calls. And if you go straight across, you can see that BLS calls are up 12%, and our ALS calls are up almost 10%. And overall, call volume wise, we're up 10.23%. So things have not slowed down. I don't really think that they're going to slow down. They're just going to continue to rise. So we're busy, and we're going to stay busy. Any questions with that? No, okay. Significant events and significant incidents. So this evening, I was planning on introducing both of our new deputy chiefs. However, one of them was under the weather. Our other one is here. This is one of our new deputy chiefs, Chief Tom Hatley. He's in charge of administrative services. Our other deputy chief, I'll introduce him when he's back. Our other significant event for the month was our Forensic Fire Investigation 101 class that was put on by firefighter Rick Fryer. He participated and taught the class at Centennial Middle School. And the goal here again is teaching fire science, fire awareness to our children. And it makes a difference. Up to date, we've taught over 9,300 kids in that program. And there's only been 3 kids that have ever been caught starting fires. So I would say that it has made a huge impact in our area, and it's a great program. Significant events, we've had an unauthorized burning. When we got there, there was no fire that was present. However, the neighbor did take some really good pictures, which is always nice. So they were able to share that with us, and we were able to go meet the illegal burner and make sure that they were educated in what to burn and what not to burn. We had a vehicle fire. We were able to put that out. It was unremarkable, no issues there. Alarm system activation at Orchard Center Elementary School. We got there, it was a false alarm. And then we had a motor vehicle crash auto versus pedestrian. So that would be an ALS call, 29 Delta. Looks like the patient had a potentially broken arm. We treated the patient, got him to the hospital, and turned the scene over to PD. So at this time, that is the end of my report, and I'm here for any questions.
Questions for the chief?
The pedestrian accident, that wasn't in Millwood, was it?
Sorry.
The pedestrian accident, was that in Millwood?
This one was, yes, sir. There was another one too down in Liberty Lake.
Okay. Do we have a location where that pedestrian accident was?
No, sir, not specifically, not here.
Okay.
Generally, what's that?
Well, we like to track,
Uh,
find out, if we've got a safety issue someplace, why the pedestrian was.
Correct. You're absolutely correct. However, I have to be careful on how much information I can give on each call because of HIPAA. So I can't report. There's key figures that if you give out, and that could lead to the identity of the patient that you.
Is an actual location of the call possible to disclose, or is that?
I can do that.
Yeah, that's all we're interested in, is just if I have to send him out with more signs.
Oh. I will get that to you then. Do you?
Okay, yeah, so anytime you guys have accidents like that, if you could let us know.
Absolutely.
Where the locations were, we don't need to know the particulars of
Okay.
patient identification or anything like that.
Okay.
It helps us if we can track it, if we've got
A problem area.
problem area,
Okay.
then that helps us, especially for funding as well, for safety devices too.
Okay. Absolutely. I'll get that to you. Don't let me, or,
I'll give you cards.
perfect.
Mr. Allen, it'd be great if you'd turn on your microphone and speak into it. Thank you.
All right, let's do that all over
You-
again.
I got you your own microphone. You know you can pull it right over to you and,
I did, and I got in trouble.
wait, why?
He pushed it away. He pushed it away. It was close.
I hate all of you.
Your mic's on there.
I know, I know. Excuse me, I hate all of you.
Thank you. So I will get it to you.
Any other questions? Chief Soto, thank you very much for coming out.
Thank
We
you.
do appreciate it.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you. So that brings us to item number 7, which is our, as we have removed item number 6, so that does bring us to item number 7, our consent agenda, consisting of the May 2022 Treasurer's Report and the claims and payroll vouchers, and the regular meeting minutes for the May 10th, the minutes for the regular meeting on May 10th, 2022. Would any member of the council like to take any of those items separately for consideration? Not seeing or hearing any, do I have a motion on the consent agenda as presented this evening?
I make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
I second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
I abstain.
Fair
I
enough.
abstain.
Any opposed? Hearing none opposed, the consent agenda is approved tonight. 3 in favor, 1 abstention, no nays. Thank you very much. That brings us to our action items this evening. Our first action item tonight is a public hearing on the 6-year Transportation and Improvement Plan. We will begin the item with a presentation from Mr. Paul Allen, the Public Works Director.
Right. Well, it's small, isn't it? So I've got my own copy here, so I can at least read that. So last month, we brought up this transportation improvement plan as well. So as you're aware, we have to, every year, we do an update on our transportation improvement plan. We submit that to SRTC, and that qualifies us for funding for projects. Plus, it kind of gives us an idea of the maintenance and projects that we need to do for maintaining our streets. So the first line item, we'll just go through these one by one very quickly. We went through it last month, but I'll go into it just so you have a little better idea. I did do some changing around since the last presentation we did last month. Just kind of reprioritized a few things. So the first one is the Argonne widening project in the Turnpike. That's scheduled for 2023. So currently we're working on that. We're hoping that we are still on track. hopeful that this will go in 2023. I'm sure it will go in 2023. Things have progressed just recently to where I think we're going to be able to meet that date. The next one is the Argonne grind and overlay. We do have that scheduled. We've got it in there for 2023. That was hopeful that we would be able to have some additional funding for that project. Right now it's unfunded. But we do have a TIB application process that's coming up shortly, and I'll discuss that in my regular report. So that'll be basically a grind and overlay from Euclid to South Riverway. There's a project, so in 2024, and that's the Argonne grind and overlay, and that's the Trent and Buckeye area. It's a very short road, but it's extensive. So as you can tell by the price of it, you know, it's about $300,000 just to do that little short section, because it's basically a complete rebuild on that section. That's where the asphalt meets the concrete there, just before you get to Trent. So with all the heavy traffic that we have on there, it's just taking a toll on the road there. 2025, we've got the Empire chip seal project. That one too is fairly extensive for a chip seal project, because there's a lot of pavement prep to do on Empire. We've got a couple places where the road is deteriorated in certain places, so we'll need to go in there and do the prep on that before we can schedule a chip seal on it. We also have another one scheduled for that same year, and that would be on Euclid. So we'd be able to continue down Empire and straight across down Euclid and do that all in one shot. So typically we contract with Spokane County for that service. But again, all of that prep work has to be done. That one, there's very little prep has to be done on that one. So you can see a huge difference in the price there. The Liberty chip seal would be scheduled for 2026, and the Buckeye chip seal as well in 2026. Again, both those are fairly inexpensive. There's a little bit of work to be done on Liberty. We've got a few little spots that we need to go in there and do some repairs to the road. 2027, we've got a Argonne grind and overlay from Buckeye to Euclid. That's a fairly expensive project just because of the size of the road and the distance that we'd be doing. We pushed two of these projects off to 2028. One of them is the Empire traffic calming and the Empire bike lane that we wanted to do on that. The bike lane may happen sooner, depends on funding abilities. The Empire traffic calming, as we discussed, we were doing the Argonne road widening project, and so we want to see how that project goes, or how the traffic flows after that project is completed, to see what differences that makes to the Empire traffic. In the meantime, we'll be working with Welch-Comer to come up with a plan for traffic calming depending on traffic calculations. And so we'll do a scenario on that, but that way we'll have a plan hopefully in place before we need it, that we'll be able to make adjustments to that traffic calming after the project has been completed and we actually do a little more study on what the traffic flows are. So that's the 6-year transportation improvement plan. So you can see the costs on that are, you know, with the Argonne project in there, it's, you know, about $4.2 million. And with the maintenance on there, we didn't have the Argonne project in that second column, so that's why it looks like it's a lot less, but it's actually more because those are with the improvements that we would have to do that Welch-Comer had recommended for a couple of those projects. Any questions?
Questions for Paul? I can say that from being at SRTC, the new IIJA and improving infrastructure bills, there is money now that will potentially be delegated out to local agencies for the street rehabilitations or preservations, like the grind and overlays and stuff. So there are funding sources out there and coming. They just haven't been funded yet. So I do believe that we will have the opportunity to look for some funding on at least both that grind and overlay for Euclid and the grind and overlay for Trenton Buckeye. So Mr. Wurst noticed something in this.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, do we have a resolution proposed to the council? That's how it's historically been adopted?
That is how it's historically been adopted.
Yeah, and I think with wasn't the tip now specifically incorporated into the comprehensive plan by reference as well? Yeah. So I know by statute, this has to be adopted by July 1 of every year, so.
Yes.
But we don't have a resolution to prepare with this, so what's the plan for adoption and approval?
Well, you're the attorney. So.
Yeah, well, I don't think we have a resolution to approve with this.
Yeah,
So
typically that is correct. There would be a resolution that we would approve at the time, and that is an oversight on my part that we didn't put this into a resolution brought before the city council. For that, I apologize.
So I think what would be best tonight is understanding that this needs to be approved before July 1. What I'll do is we will come up with the resolution. We will, what's the correct Robert's rules? We're suspending this one?
Well, we gotta actually open and close the hearing.
Why would we do we want to do that, or do we just want to suspend this until we have the resolution, do the public hearing then?
You know, because if you close it, and then, so how are we adopting the resolution then?
We'll have to have a special meeting to adopt the resolution.
Yeah,
So wouldn't I need to public notice that public hearing again? Again, I don't have a mic, sorry.
Right, yeah, no, if we publish notice for the hearing tonight, you can hold the hearing and close the hearing and then adopt the resolution at a later date. That's typically what we've done, is we've held the hearing and then adopted
Okay.
at the following meeting. The other, trying to shift on the fly, not the norm of the city, but I guess if we wanted to make a verbal motion that, no,
We can't, because only council can do resolutions.
yeah.
And if it has to be in a resolution form. So what we'll do is we'll reach out to folks for basically a 5-minute meeting at some point, probably early next week is what I would imagine. How many days would notice we need? We just need 48 hours for that?
24.
24? So I would check your schedules for Monday or Tuesday. I am out of town Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, but I don't think I have to be here for that resolution if that's the only time.
So Monday's a holiday, so.
Tuesday.
Tuesday, 6 p.m.
Yeah, if people can make it work, it'll be a quick one.
And we should, under the new legislation, as long as you open the meeting here in person, if there's a way that can be done remotely, even by phone for a quick meeting, you could do that remotely with folks as well, as long as the physical meeting room is open.
Oh, I'll be here.
Okay.
I will be here. We can figure all that out. People, if folks can't physically make the meeting, we can get you into it. So that'll be fine. I'll be here. So at this time, are there any questions for Paul from the council regarding the 6-year tip? Not seeing or hearing any. So it is 7:24, and I will open the public hearing on the 6-year transportation improvement plan for 2022. Have we received any comments, written comments regarding the 6-year tip?
No, we have not.
Do we have anybody on any of our media?
No, we do not.
So I will make the call to the audience. Second call for comments to the 6-year Transportation Improvement Plan. Third call for public comments to the 6-year Transportation Improvement Plan. Seeing or hearing nobody, either remotely or in person, come forward to make comments, I will close the public hearing at 7:25. And at this time, we will move to a special meeting with a resolution scheduled for Tuesday, June the 21st at 6 p.m. for presentation to the council, a resolution for adoption of the 6-year TIP. So that brings us to item number 8B, Ordinance 527, updates to the Title 17 zoning regulations. Ms. Jansen.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here tonight with the updates to the zoning code, and I think it's fitting that Mr. Stravens is here with us as well, because he and I have been through the ringer on this. So arguably, in all of my years of land use planning, never happier or frankly prouder to bring a document to a city council for approval. So the impetus for this update started with Tom Richardson, who had a ongoing list of updates that needed to be made prior to his retirement that he passed on to me. And very quickly I realized that the code really needed some major attention when I took up the planning position. The Planning Commission and I began work on these regulation updates in the summer of 2018. So that tells you how long we've been working on it. During that time, the project was put on hold for the legislative update to the comprehensive plan, the legislative update to the shoreline plan, COVID. So we have really been through the ringer with this, and it was really a learning curve, both for me to learn how to work with the commission and for them to learn about working with my style. And now on the back end of it, I think we're in a much better place than when we started. I'm going to run through just briefly the main points of what we did through this update, and then I'll answer any questions you might have. So we had a couple of main objectives. I had a couple of main objectives as we started working through the code. The first was formatting. It was very difficult to read. I don't know how much time any of you have spent in the code. I thought that it was difficult to read, but then I got a lot of outside comments from other folks who work in codes a lot that it was just very difficult to read. We did a review of the content, which I'll talk about just a little bit. And then, of course, we added some new content that'll be familiar to you as you have seen it before. On the formatting side, one of the big things that we did was the code still has actually throughout other chapters, definitions located in a number of different areas. So at the beginning of the zoning information, it had a section on definitions. At the beginning of the sign section, it had definitions. And I felt, and I think the Planning Commission concurred, that a person wouldn't typically look in multiple places. They'd look for one definition section. So what we did was just compiled all of the zoning definitions into one section that we called Appendix A. My hope is, as we work through the rest of the chapters in the code, that we will take definitions from all of the chapters and move them into Appendix A, so that in the end we just have one definition section and people don't have to hunt through the whole code. The next big thing that I was really a proponent of, and it took a little convincing, I think, for some, but our code was written completely in paragraphs, which is a little problematic. And so I proposed that we transfer things into more of a table format. That's typically what you see in other codes, other zoning codes throughout the country. Part of the problem was, and I've highlighted some language here at the bottom, you can see that it says all uses permitted in the UR2 zone are permitted in the UR3 zone. So there wasn't a consolidated place where you could just find out if it was, you know, if animal keeping was permitted. You had to flip back to UR2 and then maybe flip back to UR1, and it was a little confusing. So what we did was we transferred all of those permitted uses out of the zoning chapters and into what we call the permitted use table. So you can see this is pages long. This is just a sample of it. But very quickly you can find whatever the uses that you're interested in locating in Millwood and very easily determine whether or not it's a permitted use or not. That was a huge project that I'll speak about a little bit more. And also, by converting all of that information into from paragraphs into a table, we really decreased the number of pages in the code. On the right-hand side, you can see in that column that occasionally for different zones and different uses, there'll be some additional conditions of approval that may apply, and those would be indicated by the C. Sometimes you can see that the condition would fit in that table on the side, just only those properties with frontage on Trent, for instance. But other times the conditions are a little bit more involved, and so we just put a reference to that code section where you can find those conditions, and that should be really easy for people to follow. The other thing that we converted into a table, which was a big deal, was our development standards. So that's things like setbacks, building height, lot coverage, those sort of things. This is 3 examples from our residential zones on your screen right now. All 3 of the zones are just repeating the same information over and over and over, and it really made for an unnecessarily long code. The other problem with repeating information like that is if by some chance, and we found this as we went through the code, an amendment is made, you have to remember all the different places that it's located in the code, and invariably that doesn't happen. And so you end up with conflicting information. So I really encourage the Planning Commission to consolidate everything down to where the regulations are just located in one place. And then in other areas of the code where those regulations might apply, rather than copying that information, we just put a reference in back to that original code section. That also was a huge space saver at the end of the project. So this is what the residential development standards table looks like now. And again, you can see that it's super easy if you know what zone your lot is located in to use this table that's very easy to hand out to citizens. They can determine what their minimum lot size is, what their setbacks are, information about accessory buildings. So this is a really good change that we made. Similar tables were completed for the commercial, industrial, and public reserve zoning districts. And then we also converted our parking regulations into a table. I didn't provide that here for you to see, but rather than paragraph form, it just says if you have a retail establishment, this many parking spots per square foot. I talked about this a little bit. This is that duplicate information. So this is the storage requirements in the residential zones. You can see that in each of the zones, it's just the same text over and over and over. And so we moved that repeated text that applied to all of the zones into a section that just says regulations applicable to all commercial or all residential zones. And then we also have that for commercial. So we're not repeating the same information over and over. This is some of the duplicated information from the commercial zones. So now we just have these larger chapters where, again, that information is just placed one time, and we don't have to worry about in the future digging through the code and making sure that we get every reference that there is. So the next thing that we worked on was a review of the content of the code. As I said, Tom had a list. We looked at that list early on. Some of the things that he had on there was determined that we didn't think there needed to be changes. Some things did. One of the things that I suggested to the Planning Commission was that we talk about our zone definitions. So we all know that UR1 is the east end of town, a little more rural. UR3 is the denser. But to someone just looking at this, all they say is residential zone. And that's not very descriptive to help someone understand what we're trying to achieve. So we worked together to come up with just a short paragraph about what the intent of those different zones are as far as low density, medium density, high density. And then we did the same thing with the commercial. C1 up on Trent, a little bit more regional in scale, serving, lots of people from outside of Millwood, where Argonne is more of our central business district. Our businesses are a little smaller, meant for Millwood. And then light industrial. We did not include the heavy industrial because that's just the paper mill, and we didn't think that needed a definition. So those have been included. And then we went through use by use and discussed every use that was in there, every zone it could go in. It took us 7 months to go through the permitted use matrix. We did a lot of consolidation there as well. So things like we'd have multiple lines, dentist's office, doctor's office, accountant's office, 100 of different offices. So we consolidated them into like professional offices. There was a lot of consolidation, a lot of discussion about where the uses were appropriate. There was a number of uses that we just removed because they were outdated, things like meat lockers. Some things that we changed, it said drugstore, but that's not what people call the pharmacy anymore. So we did just a little updating on that. That was a huge project. This is what I was talking about with having information in different areas. We ran into this with our fence regulations, as well as this is for accessory building sizes, shops or garages. In one area of the code, it said the maximum size was 1,200 square feet. In the definitions, whereas an aside, you should never have that sort of regulation in the definitions, it said 1,000. So we removed it from the definitions and found a number of inconsistencies similar to this and removed those. Other content that we reviewed and removed or update, one of the things was a minimum dwelling size. We had a minimum dwelling size that was essentially the dimensions of a single wide trailer. And because of state law that allows manufactured homes wherever stick-built home goes, as well as the new trend of tiny homes and things of that nature, we just felt it was appropriate to remove that minimum dwelling size. When Supreme Tire went in on Trent, we ran up against a really arduous landscape buffer of 20 feet that seemed a little excessive. And so we had a long discussion about what would be appropriate between our C1 on Trent and residential neighbors and reduce that landscape buffer there from 20 feet to 10 feet. Still a robust buffer, but not quite as difficult for developers to meet. And then one of the items that Tom had recommended was a reduction of lot frontage for multifamily development in the UR3 zone. It was at 100 feet. You might recall that we did do a development over on Boeing a few years ago where they had to get a variance for 5 feet. So we reduced that 80 or 85 feet, just to make that not quite so difficult to meet. And then we went through and added the new content that you all had asked us to look at throughout the process. So What I don't have on here, you'll remember we did have a citizen come forward and ask for some changes to the fencing regulations. Those had already been completed. We added this section for administrative exceptions so that when people can just barely not make the requirements, that the planning director does have the authority to authorize some small exceptions. We put in the residential outdoor lighting standards that you all had recommended. And then one thing that our code didn't have before, but that I thought was important, was we put in the requirements for the handicap accessible parking spaces that are required when new development occurs. The Planning Commission held a public hearing on this on April 27th, I believe. We had no public comment. The code is reduced by a third. So to print it out was 90 pages, give or take, to begin with, and we're now down to about 65. So I think that, like I said, I'm really proud of it. I'm really proud of the Planning Commission. It was a slog from the beginning to the end, but they hung in there with me, and I think it's a good document that we can be proud of. And I can answer any questions if you have them.
Questions for Christina?
Christina, you went over something that went from 100 to 85 yards because of a variance that had happened a while ago. Can you rephrase that, or explain that again?
Sure. So the code had a requirement that any lot that had multifamily on it in the UR3 have a lot width of 100 feet. And we've had one development to date since I've been here that came in to do multifamily. That's over on Boeing and Trent right behind Blissful Blends. That lot was zoned UR3, so appropriate for multifamily development, but they only had 95 feet of frontage, and so they had to apply for a variance. Tom thought that a reduction was appropriate. We discussed it at Planning Commission and agreed that a slightly less wide lot would be appropriate in a higher density zoning designation. So the Planning Commission is recommending that it be, I can go back in my slides, but that it be reduced to 80 or 85 feet of lot frontage for multifamily.
Other questions for Christina? So I would like to echo Christina's kudos to the Planning Commission and to Mr. Stravens for chairing the Planning Commission through this. This was as Christina indicated, this was a significant revision to our zoning code and the way we present the information within that zoning code. I do think it's made it much more user-friendly to the public, and so eliminated the weird redundancies and the opportunities for errors and inconsistencies by having everything centralized as opposed to spread so many places throughout our code. So thank you very much, Mr. Stravens, for leading us through that.
Thank you, Mayor. And thank you, Christina. I think that obviously I'll be abstaining from the vote, but I think it's a much more user-friendly. I think before lots of redundancy, I think it was hard for staff and hard for the public. So I think it's a good product. I'm proud of the product. And thank you, Mr. Wurst, for leading us for, 18 months, 24 months of lots of hard work. So
I wouldn't say
thank
leading. I got to participate in a
you
very big role.
yes, you participated.
The leader over here.
Yeah,
but
well,
no, it
and
was-
you did not lead, yes. And so, yes,
No.
and it was staff that led us, so thank you.
I just want to echo one comment, well, follow up on a comment, which was not only is it a better product, but I think it's a vastly different method of delivering information in the city code than the city's ever used, which took a significant amount of training, understanding up front by the Planning Commission, by staff and everyone. So it was a long process, but it also required an educational effort. And I'm kind of hoping that we can look at, I'm not trying to invite this on you, but I'm hoping that we can look at other sections of the code that have similar, duplicative concepts and condense it and make it user-friendly as well. It was good work, good work.
Thank you. I don't think, this isn't specific to Millwood. I think any code that is in place over a long period of time where you have staff turnover and that sort of thing, this tends to happen. I think every jurisdiction needs to go through this once every 25 years or sometime after I've retired. So,
So tonight, my apologies. So tonight, you have presented before you for your consideration an ordinance to adopt the revisions to the Chapter 17 zoning code. Is there, so at this time, we can either hold it over for a month if there's more reading that the council needs to do, or you may move to accept it and adopt ordinance number 527. Do I have a motion from the council?
I have a couple more questions.
Oh, continue, please.
So, I know that council member Culler, maybe 5 months back, asked about us revisiting the animals or suburban agriculture, however we want to say it. Was that addressed in here?
no, it wasn't. Simply because we really needed to move on. So if we want to come back and handle, look at that again now, then be glad to put that on their agenda. But we really, after 4 years, we really needed to just get it adopted. So if the council wants us to go back and look at that, we definitely can.
May I ask another question? So, I get that you clarified that UR1 is over here, correct? Over by the paper mill. What is the differentiator between UR2 and UR3?
Something's wrong with my mouse. I'm trying to get something on the screen for you here. But this mouse is not. So the big one you can see in UR3 is that, well, first of all, let me point out under multifamily, it says a lot width is 100 feet. Kevin just pointed that out to me, so that will be updated. But you can see that the UR3 does allow that multifamily with a lot size of 2,500 per dwelling unit, where in the UR2 it doesn't.
So I guess, what do I live in? A UR2 or a UR3?
UR2.
UR2, okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah. And these, obviously, these requirements are for new buildings, new lots. Your lots and your buildings may not meet these, and that's not a big deal. And then down here, we have the information about setbacks for detached garages and shops. We talk about building height, and this carries down here with some more little conditions. So, yeah. I will correct that multifamily thing after I talk so much about it. How embarrassing.
So, go ahead. Go ahead.
So, not to belabor this point, as I read this right now, UR3 people are not allowed to keep any chickens. And I recall that our previous code was that every homeowner could have, depending on, like some can only have 4, myself being one of them. Some people who live over here can have like 20 something. But, so did the UR3 people that live in UR3 just have their code changed to where they can't have bunnies and chickens?
No, the current code does not allow that.
Okay.
So we didn't make any changes to the animal keeping regulations. They just went through as they were written in the existing code.
Okay.
Any other questions on any of the items? So Christina, is the consensus of the council to approve this tonight? Excellent. Christina, what is the actual number that needs to be inserted in that table then?
85.
85.
That's on the frontage.
Yes.
Yes, lot frontage in the UR3 for multifamily.
So do I have a motion from a council member to amend the presented lot frontage for multifamily in table 17-2 from 100 feet to 85 feet?
I'll move that we amend table 17-2 under UR3 frontage from 100 feet to 85 feet.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Are there any opposed? Are there any abstentions? So the table 17-2 is amended to 85 feet by a vote of 3 to none with 1 abstention. So at this time, is there a motion on the amended ordinance 527?
I make a motion to adopt ordinance 527 as amended.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
The motion's been moved and seconded to adopt 527, ordinance 527 as amended. Any discussion from the council? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none, are there any abstentions?
Abstain.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none opposed, the ordinance is approved as amended by a vote of 3 to none with 1 abstention. We can come back and look at the, I'll get them working on the animals. And I think an idea would be, I know you and Christina are gonna meet.
Yeah.
So maybe some direction from what you were thinking about at that time would be a good time, and then come back and then we can always
Sounds
move
good,
that. Thank you. So again, thank you, Mr. Stravens. Thank you, council, for your consideration and reading through this. And so that one is done. That's been a long time coming, so thank you all very much. So item number 8C, ordinance 528, a ordinance for the authorization to condemn property. The description in the agenda might say property condemnation, but what we're looking for in this ordinance is the authorization, if necessary, to condemn certain real property. Mr. Wirsch, do you want to take this? Okay, so report from Brian.
Okay. So ordinance 527 had a lot of details. This one has about just as many. So buckle up. As you all know, the city has engaged in over a decades-long effort to address traffic congestion on Argonne. As set forth in the ordinance, there's a significant amount of focus that has been done through the comprehensive plan amendments, through citizen workshops, public hearings, and then just the Argonne corridor study, which involved public workshops, all of which focused on the need to make certain improvements to Argonne to curtail, curb, or otherwise address traffic, creating turn lanes and additional buffers and sidewalks and protected areas. That sets forth a significant component of the resolution in the whereas clauses, all of which is important to state that to the extent that the council authorizes ordinance 528 and authorizes condemnation proceedings to go forward against Inland Empire Paper, that property would be obtained through condemnation and used for public purposes. It would have a public benefit. We have laid out a significant record in our over a decade-long worth of planning documents to support that. The hope is that we do not have to proceed with actual condemnation. This is a pretty broad ordinance that allows, delegates authority to the mayor to institute condemnations if necessary. It also allows for its administrative settlement, and basically anything in between, whether we actually have to go to court or we can resolve it under the threat of litigation. That's important for a property owner because they, under section 1033 of the tax code, the property owner can get significant tax benefits basically the non-recognition of gains for the property that's taken by condemnation. So there is a benefit to the property owner if we can administratively settle this under the threat of condemnation. We don't have a threat of condemnation absent this ordinance being adopted, though. You, the council, have the sole authority to authorize condemnation. And to be clear, condemnation is the taking of property for public purposes of the city. You know, that's the condemnation, or eminent domain is the statutory term that's used. But the RCW does require that process be initiated by ordinance of the city council. We've set forth in the ordinance the area that would be taken, which is about 13,942 square feet of property from IEP along the roadway here east on Argonne. That's necessary for the Argonne widening project, as well as a temporary construction easement that would be necessary on their property, on the IEP property, to allow for the Argonne project to move forward. The city, we've discussed with the council late last year and earlier this year that an appraisal was commissioned. The offer was made to IEP in the amount of $150,000, which is the amount that the council would be authorizing as the, basically a fair market value acquisition under condemnation proceedings. I can answer any questions from there, but really what is necessary is that we take this next step with the hope that we can resolve it with Inland Empire paper without proceeding to litigation. But due to the timing, due to the availability of funds and the timing necessary for the city to take action, we have to get authorization from the council if we need to move forward with this in the next 30 or 60 days from a litigation standpoint.
So just to, before I open it up for questions, just to piggyback off a couple things that Brian indicated. The offer for the property has been made to IEP. IEP has elected to have their own appraisal of the property done. I have had discussions with the chairman and general manager of IEP, and they are accelerating that appraisal process to work with us on this. But I would remind the council that when we accepted funds for the Argonne Congestion Relief Project, one of the elements of that funding was that the city of Millwood, if they took the funding, would exhaust all measures to complete the project, including condemnation of property as part of the funds. Because of inflation, costing, etc., the project is now almost funded at $4 million with the agreements to the railroad, things like that. So these funds need to be obligated by no later than October 1st.
September.
Later, is it September 1? So time is of the essence on this, and the city has a duty to show that we are taking all steps necessary on our part should something derail a property acquisition process. So as Brian was saying, the intent is not to condemn the property in any way. The intent is to have this as a friendly acquisition, but we need to have this ordinance considered, and hopefully the council will approve said ordinance.
The goal is friendly acquisition. The intent is condemnation if necessary.
It does not bind us to condemnation.
Correct.
Do they have a timeline on their expedited appraisal?
I think it's next week.
Okay. So if we authorize tonight, it just moves everything ahead a month if you need the option to do
Yes,
condemnation.
and there are certain elements of this that should we go to negotiations between a owner's estimate and an acquirer's estimate, the fact that we have set forth by ordinance that we are moving to condemnation shows that we are ready to take the next steps if we cannot come to resolution. So any questions from the council for Mr. Wurst? Any questions on the Argonne Pride? Oh, go ahead.
So is there any way that this can be voted on next month? I intend to abstain, so just letting you know that.
Well, Mr. Stravens can vote on it.
Hey, welcome to the council, Kelly. I suppose the council could wait to the July meeting, or I think if it's the will of the council to not address it or not address it tonight and consider it, I think what I'd want to have you do is be prepared for a special meeting to be called so we can address it at the latest moment that we need to do it. I realize it's not the most tasteful process for an agency to operate within its businesses and citizens and property owners in the city. But if the council does not wish to act on it tonight, I'm not sure that waiting till July is going to work. We may have to be in a special meeting session upon receipt of any information from Inland Empire paper next week. I think part of the urgency is we have given Inland Empire paper a significant amount of time to try to work with the city to address this. To their credit, they expedited their appraisal. I think initially they were indicating that they couldn't have an appraisal back. An expedited appraisal means additional cost. And they had the appraisal they had ordered probably wasn't going to be received until July. And that August, excuse me, and that just wasn't going to provide for sufficient timing. So they are moving at a pace that we appreciate. I just want to make sure the council understands we might need to be able, we might have to react fairly quickly if that appraisal indicates something that's different than what our professional appraisal done in anticipation of condemnation has shown.
So can Mr. Stravens vote if he wishes to?
Oh, yeah, no, he's on the council, he's sworn in, you have a quorum tonight, which only takes, of the council, it only takes three to approve a motion. So if the council wishes to proceed tonight, you could certainly do so. I just was trying to emphasize the fact that if we wish to delay it, we might be back next week on 2 occasions, so.
So is there a motion or a desire from the council for ordinance 528?
I'm inclined to propose a motion or to adopt the ordinance tonight to give the mayor authorization to proceed with condemnation if necessary. I think most of us here hope for a friendly acquisition, and really condemnation should be the last resort. But this is 10 years in the making, and we have obligations on our funding with less than 90 days. So.
And we really have obligations on the funding.
That's a hard date. So I'm inclined to vote in approval tonight, or to at least put it to the vote to the council.
So do I have
I move adoption of ordinance 528 as presented.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Any abstaining? So ordinance 528 is adopted as presented. Thank you very much. That brings us to 8. Why do I do that?
Take that one.
Okay, yeah, well, which one is it? Because
Resolution 2022-04, item 8D on the agenda.
what he said. Mr. Wurst?
So, recall we had some discussion last month on House Bill 1329 and how we wanted to proceed with the public comments. We will call for oral public comments at the end of the meeting, even though it's not on the agenda. That's something we agreed that we would be doing at the meetings. You will see upon adoption of this resolution at the next meetings, we'll have a new little box at the top of the meetings that will identify how written comments will be submitted for action items. The council at the time had discussed a process 24 hours in advance, which would then allow for the provision of the written comments to you on action items on the agenda. So what the resolution does is it amends the public participation policy. Did it get sent in a red line, or is that just the clean version? Did you accept all the revisions? You did. Okay, so it provides for revision to section B of the public comment portion under the policy that states, public comment shall be in accordance with engrossed substitute House Bill 1329. Public comment regarding items on the agenda for which final action is anticipated to be taken at a regular meeting shall be in the form of public comment submitted to the city no later than 24 hours in advance of the regular meeting, and such public comment shall be distributed to the council or governing body in advance of the meeting. The council may waive or vary this requirement for written public comment when the council determines it to be necessary in the best interest of the city. We wanted to build in that flexibility as we go forward. The next paragraph talks about for any item not on the agenda, for any item for which final action is not anticipated to be taken, public comment will be allowed in the written or oral form except at the meeting. And this is that public expression portion that we've historically had, except through the COVID remote meetings. And then we'll have as we've always had, we'll have the sign-up forms at the outset, so that way there's a records that we can then incorporate into our meeting minutes accordingly. So those are the revisions to the public comment policy. I think they capture what the council at the last month's meeting discussed. But I will say, I had the COVID last month, so my notes were a little sketchy, and I kind of had to circle back with staff to get some clarification. So happy to answer any questions from the council.
Questions on our resolution 2022-04, revising our citizen participation guidelines to bring us in line with the ESB 1329. Any questions, comments?
Can we have two section Bs, we need a bump.
We do have two section Bs. Why, look at that.
B through F just need to be incremented to the next letter.
That they do.
Scribner's error.
Actually, no, there's BC, DC,
Oh, yeah, there's even more.
E, F.
The intern.
Well,
looks
Well,
like a vision.
Well,
tool.
if we're doing this, somebody needs to revise the line spacing on the third paragraph of the first item B.
Can I get a motion on resolution?
So, is there a motion on resolution 2022-04 as with the Scribner's revisions to attachment A?
I'll make a motion to approve resolution 2022-04 with the revisions.
Is there a second?
I second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none opposed, resolution 2022-04 is passed unanimously. Thank you. So that brings us to, and I did it again. That brings us to item 8E, a planning commission appointment. Christina, you want to take this, or you just want me to go through this?
I'll just say that with the appointment of Mr. Stravens to the city council, we had an opening on our planning commission, and we advertised that on the website, on the reader board, and we had one individual express interest in joining. His name is Bill Rickard. He lives down on South Riverway. He came in and met with both me and the mayor. He has a municipal background as far as his work history, and seems like he'll be a real asset to the Planning Commission.
Brings another level of expertise as a water quality coordinator for City of Spokane. So always good to have somebody like that on our Planning Commission, particularly with the shoreline management items we have to do. Mr. Stravens knows him and vouches for him.
I do. Yes.
So any comments or questions? So at this time, I would be asking the council for appointment of R. William Rickard Jr., Bill, to the Planning Commission to serve out the remainder of Mr. Stravens' term. Is that the way that works?
That is correct, and Mr. Stravens was just reappointed, so this term goes to the end of 2026.
So, motion.
I'll make a motion that we appoint R. William Rickard Jr. to the vacant position on the Planning Commission for the remainder of Mr. Stravens' term.
Is there a second?
I will second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Mr. Rickard is now a member of the Millwood Planning Commission. Thank you. So that brings us to item 8F, the City Hall interior painting estimates. Who wants to do that one? Doesn't have a mic, so you have to do it.
I don't have a mic. She'll do anything to not have to talk.
Oh, right, that's something that people say about me.
So we will have, this will be Ms. Lisa Castles to discuss the estimates and the why and the wherefore too, a little bit.
So we started off to get 3 estimates for commercial painting. I'm not really sure how long it's been since this has been painted, but it's been a while. So we're gonna go with a little bit, just kind of an offish white, get rid of the dull, kind of tannish. We have 3 estimates. They're widely ranged. We ended up with 4 because of the initial third one that we were to receive. There was the estimator got hurt, sick or something, and was unable to get us the estimate. So then we got another one. But then he did end up coming in at the end with the estimate. We tried to make sure that it was all apples to apples, with them all doing the exact same thing, using the same sort of paint. I think it's similar. I think one of the highest estimate, I do believe that may be a better paint, but I told him over and over again what everybody else was using, so that's what he came in with. So I think they'll all do a good job. There was one that was they were gonna move a few more things with stuff on the bookcases, so we didn't have to totally dismantle everything, because there's a lot of stuff that has to be moved to get this painted. But with that said, I think they're all fairly similar, and they were all nice estimators, so I think they'll all do a good job. Some were definitely more detailed than others, though, in their presentation, as you can see.
So questions from Mr. Worst. Is this a lowest bid or is this a quality-based selection?
It is the lowest bid. Yep. It's a public order.
Okay.
Lowest qualified bidder.
Yeah, lowest responsible bidder.
So, Debbie, when was the last time we painted this?
Prior,
Hold on.
Prior to 2009.
So we've noticed that over the years, as we have patched and painted, that the ability to match patching and painting has far exceeded the life of the paint. Also, I do believe we've discussed that because of the screens and things in here, we're going to change out these lights from the old fluorescents to the new LED style lights. So that's going to make a difference, and stuff is really going to start to show up as we've patched all these holes. And it's been a long time, and I think that they've done a good job of finding a more soothing color. What is the gray? Cotton linen? Cotton linen. I thought there was one that was called
Oh, agreeable gray.
agreeable gray. I wanted agreeable gray.
My husband calls it anxiety beige.
But I didn't get my agreeable gray. So, at this time,
So I just want to make sure, so you're awarding, what we're not doing is we're not authorizing the estimate, the pay estimate. We're awarding a public works contract in the amount not to exceed X, right? And we will be entering into a public works contract with them. We have a document.
Sure they are.
Okay, we do have a document. Something that I've been seeing and recommending lately is that as the council, you have the expenditure authority. And given the current public works environment, it may be worthwhile to authorize a contract awarded to the lowest responsible bidder, and also in the amount of X, and then also authorize a contingency of an additional 10% or 15%, so we don't have to come back to you if the paint that was bid is not on the truck, and we have to wait 2 months, and the paint price has then gone up by that much. So, Paul, I don't know if you've thought about what a reasonable contingency might be on this, but if 20% or 15% or,
This climate, I don't know, I would say 20%.
yeah. I think that I'd recommend that you authorize a contingency of 20%, and then, with the clear understanding that it's not to be spent unless it's absolutely necessary contingency expenditure,
so
Mayor, I have a conflict. One of these is a client, so I'll be abstaining.
thank you.
So we're not awarding the LED
No,
contract
no,
yet,
no,
but they
no.
will be done at the same time, so they're not.
Paul is working on that because we have a few things we're still working with the electrician on how the dimmers and all the wiring and stuff like that has to be included, and what other type of, if we dim for presentations, do we want perimeter lighting so that doesn't become totally dark, or what do we want to do? So Paul's still working through that stuff, so we'll get there. But yeah, we don't have ceiling budgeted as part of this paint, do we? They're not painting the ceiling.
No, they're not.
They're not painting the ceiling, so that's, any work that they would do on this would be, in the ceiling, doesn't have to be done simultaneously, et cetera, so we can go from there. So Mr. Wurst, do you want to propose the motion for the council's consideration?
So let me just make sure, before proposing the motion, we are authorizing the execution of a public works contract with ACI Coatings in the amount of $12,053.34, including sales tax, and authorizing an additional contingency of 20% of that amount, Paul?
20%.
Okay. Do I really need to say that over? So the motion would be to authorize the execution of a public works contract for the City Hall interior paint project to ACI Coatings in an amount of $12,053.34, including sales tax, and additionally authorizing a contingency of up to 20% of such amount.
So moved.
That's the way they do it everywhere else. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none opposed, are there any abstentions?
Abstain.
The contract is awarded to ACI Coatings by a vote of 3-0 with 1 abstention. Thank you. So that concludes our action items on our agenda for this evening. That brings us to our reports, our Public Works report. Mr. Allen.
Okay. Got my mic on? All right. So we did finish out our CCR, Consumer Confidence Report. It's been attached to the website, and a notice will be going out in the billing to all of our citizens, including that is the water use efficiency report. I've been working with Welch Comer on the generator project for New Park, and also with the replacement of the New Park well. So had a few issues with materials and timing and everything. It's just been a crazy world for trying to find materials. So actually, we had a soft start that we were trying to acquire for that New Park well. We ended up getting the last one in the United States that we could find from the East Coast. And it ended up costing us about $5,000 more because it was the last one in the United States that we could get. So unfortunately, that's just the way things have gone. So if we haven't locked in prices on things, by the time you find the item, the price has already escalated from what they won't even give you a quote that'll last for more than a week probably. So anyway, so the progress on that, we are waiting for one piece left to come back so we can put the pump back in the ground and the new motor on. Like I said, the soft start has been, they started installing that yesterday. That'll be completed by the end of the week. So that when the pump does go in, we can get that back online and get it going. Thank goodness for the weather that's been holding off, because that's the pump that we use mostly during the July and August timeframe for the irrigation. Let's see, Argonne project update. I think we talked a little bit about that. We had a meeting with UP Railroad the other day and the UTC, and I believe that we've come to agreement on items that we're kind of holding up the project. We feel confident that it'll be able to move forward, and that'll take care of our obligations to get the right-of-ways portion of it done with the exception of the IEP property at this point. So that'll be the last piece of the puzzle that we need to get before we can move to the construction phase on that and meet those target deadlines that we were talking about for funding and for SRTC to be able to meet their target goals as well. I have a meeting with Welch Comer tomorrow. We talked about the TIP, the Transportation Improvement Plan, with all of the projects that we've got. So TIB funding has become available this year. So we'll be meeting with them. There's an application date or deadline for August 19th. So we'll go over our projects, see what other funding we can get. The beautiful thing about TIB is state money. There's no federal money, so there's no a lot of other attachments to that. It's pretty clean, and we have a 5% match versus a 13.5% match as we do with the federal projects. So. The crew's been busy working on the wading pool, or all of the green spaces out there. As you know, it's been raining cats and dogs, so we've been having a hard time keeping up with everything, including the weeds. The pool, I kind of want to bring that to your attention. We're working on the pool. As soon as it quits raining long enough to where we can finish getting it painted, it'll be ready to go. Problem is, we don't have anybody to man the pool. So we've advertised, we've put out notices, we've done social media, we've contacted the high school, we've used all of our resources that we have in order to try to get seasonal employees. We need 2 kids to do the pool, and we need a seasonal person to help us out with the lawn care needs for the city. We've had 0 responses. So the pool at this point, I'm just going to throw it out to you. If we don't have anybody to man the pool will not open this year. And if we end up getting only 1 person to do the pool, it'll be on reduced hours and days. And we kind of did that during some other times where we had staffing issues. I don't understand it, it's a great job. All the jobs here are great, you know, and, yeah, we just had, I've never experienced this before. Been here a long time, started as one of those kids, and, you know, as many of our employees have. And I don't know, it just blows my mind that we can't find somebody. So we're running on a short time frame to get this done, but.
Paul,
So,
Mike, is there any way, I did have one call about a 15-year-old. I know it says 16. Is there any way we can lower that age limit to a 15-year-old and retry that? Because you can get a cert at 15.
so you're talking about the lifeguard position?
Yes.
So we had some staff discussions today about what options we need to discuss with our legal counsel before we can move forward with some of that.
So, provided to Christine, I can forward to you, there is a process for getting a minor work permit on for seasonal work. I don't think you will have it, even if you applied 2 weeks ago, you won't have it before the pool is scheduled to open on Monday. There is a process to apply and get approval for that. Also requires parental consent from the minors, you know, the parents of the minor who would be working. But there is a process. I think the other thing that we would need to do, though, is I would strongly encourage the city to consult with our risk pool insurer on hiring a minor. Not that 15 is any more mature than 16 and has a lifeguard certificate, but we have had, you know, we've had a number of discussions over the years on the pool with our risk pool insurer, and I think we need to make sure that whatever we're doing from a hiring aspect satisfies the WCIA. I would share your comments. There was an article in yesterday's Spokesman about the city of Spokane Valley operating one pool on a daily basis because of lack of applicants. You know, my son's working for the county at the water park, and we were talking about it. It's vastly different to be sitting in a wading pool or at a swimming pool with a diving board. The county is well-staffed, but they're sending kids down water slides. It's not active lifeguarding, and it's a very different realm and element of training that's required. So we're in process. The paperwork's sitting on, I'll forward you guys the email as well. It's sitting there, but it'll take consent by Labor and Industries, and then there's also a consent by Department of Revenue, neither of which moves at more than a snail's pace right now. So.
Yeah, I think we're just going to have to, you know, educate the public with, you know, the processes that we are going through to try to reopen that pool. It's been closed down for several years because of COVID restrictions, and we were anticipating that we would be able to open it as soon as the school was out, but because of staffing issues, we just have are not going to be able to do that.
Is what is required is I do remember you even put something out with our water bills, is what's required is just a lifeguard certification?
So it's a basic lifeguard CPR first aid class that you can take online through the Red Cross. So, yeah, it's very simple to achieve. The city will pay for that, or reimburse them once they've achieved the certificate.
Are you open to adults though? I will tell you,
Our only requirement was a minimum age of 16.
Okay.
Or maximum, or yeah, minimum age of 16. Yeah, when we advertised,
I
because
wasn't
that's
asking
what our.
for me. I have a couple jobs, but I mean, to me, it seems like it may be something that like somebody who's semi-retired or something might equally bid into, because children or adolescents, people my son's age, have a surprising job opportunities out there. Honestly, I find it a bit stunning.
Let's say we don't discriminate, okay?
Yeah.
So. Yeah. So if you do hear of anybody, please let them know. Sooner we can do that. If they meet the requirements of 16 at this point, then yeah, we can move forward and hopefully get the pool open a little sooner. If not, like I said, we will have to, put up some notifications and, maybe put out in our next newsletter, just a reason as to why the pool is not open, so. Any other questions about the seasonal staff? Okay. Tree Board is has solicited for a consultant off the MRSC roster. And so at our next meeting in June, which would be the 29th of June, I believe, set fourth Monday, we will be going through the consultant list and doing a selection of the consultants. And then we'll be back to you in July to enter into an agreement with the consultant that is selected. So, and if you're gonna have a couple of special meetings, maybe we'll slide one of those in there. So, we did receive some quotes for the LED lighting that we were talking about. So those were in the budget, those projects. So we did solicit for quotes for that. And we did select a quote. We're working with a contractor. Like I said, we're going to be replacing the LED lights in all of the upstairs. We're going to, he's going to purchase a sample light so that we can bring it in here and see what it looks like before we order all the rest of the lights up. And so we'll have further discussion with that. So we are going to have to try to coordinate so that we're not doing our project simultaneously with the project with the painting. Luckily, all ours is on the ceiling, and they're not going to be doing any ceiling. We just don't want them in here at the same time. So the LED lighting conversion should go fairly quickly. We've got different locations throughout the building that we'll be doing. All of the painting will be done upstairs. So some of the stuff that we do downstairs and out in the shop and the tennis court lighting won't affect when the contractor's here. So hopefully we can move them around a little bit. So we will have some new lighting out at the tennis courts. Like I said, that will be LED lighting. We are also able to get some Vista incentives for changing our lights out to LED, which is reflected in the cost that I had for the quotes. So we have had a couple of issues with some of our equipment. Backhoe, we had I don't know if you're familiar with diesel engines, but they have a thing called DEF, and we had a DEF sensor that went out on our backhoe and found out that it could be possibly 6 months that we would have to wait for these sensors to come in. Luckily, we have a good connection with the local cat dealer, and so they were actually able to find one and plead a case that, we're a municipality and it's a emergency vehicle. And so we ended up finding one and got it installed, and we are back in business again. So feel sorry for the contractors that have those, because they're losing money every day when they're not working. So, anyway, just had a few different things that have happened, with the truck hydraulics and stuff, the snow plow or the snow de-icer. We've had issues with that. We spent a ton of money trying to resolve that issue. I think we finally have found the correct people to assist us with that problem, and we should have that resolved before, the next couple months, before, at least in plenty of time before we do any of our de-icing. But yeah, it's been an issue. We've been dealing with this for several years, but this year, for some reason, we just started going through hydraulic pumps and pulling out all kinds of different things. So that's about what I've got for you for this month. So, any questions?
Do you have any other comments?
Do you want me to make my comment?
I think it would be appropriate.
Okay. So, like I said, I've been here for quite a while. So I started as a park kid in 1979, I believe. And then I went off and did a few other things. And then ended up in Orchard Avenue next door for about a year. And then a job came open here. And so I applied and got the position. So I've been here on a full-time basis for over 38 and a half years. So I talked to the mayor and let him know that I was going to retire. So didn't think it'd be that emotional, sorry. I've spent more time at Millwood than I have at my, with employees at Millwood than I actually have with my wife, because more waking hours, let's put it that way. So anyway, Millwood has been a big part of my life. I've been very fortunate to have a career in one location for as long as I have. I've seen a lot of things in Millwood and have really enjoyed the community. Plan on continuing to be a part of the community, but things in my life have changed a little bit, and some of my priorities, and so I need to concentrate on those. And but I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. It'll be sometime in the spring of 2023. So, but it's been a great place to work. Work with a lot of great people. So.
Well, I know Paul has had a lot of consternation over this, and if there's anybody you could say borders on the irreplaceable, it's Mr. Allen. And so Paul will be greatly missed, but as Paul says, he's been here more than he's been home. So it's time for you to go home and enjoy all the good things that you have in your life. And to that end, because they don't make Paul Allens anymore, we need to, I will be coming back with an actual real-life transition plan, or I'm developing a transition plan, more than likely in order to reduce burden on Paul for the transition and get folks up to speed, everything like that. We're going to add a fourth full-time public works employee for a duration while Paul is making the transition. He has a lot of institutional knowledge to offload. He has a lot of things that one person, it is amazing what he takes care of. And so for him to be able to transition that off and then make sure that he's around long enough to answer the mundane questions that come up and assist if there's issues and hiccups. We're going to need that other person here, because I can see Matt and Kyle being a little overwhelmed. My intent is to transition the utilities and the public works to Matt and Kyle. And that will be a bit of a sea change for the city. But the issue is rapidly becoming, and I think we notice it here more and more, is those lines are becoming more and more specialized. And I could not imagine going out and trying to hire a director of public works who not only had to oversee parks and roads, parks, streets, sidewalks, everything like that, but also run a utility, also run a public water system, also run a sewer system. There's not those people anymore. So we need to consider, or the city will be considering, the approach for staffing in the future. But for right now, for Mr. Allen, he's going to be missed, but the city, we need to take advantage of his remaining time here and make sure that we are able to transition in a manner that doesn't kill everybody and make sure everything's out there. Paul has How many rooms of stuff do you have to go through before you leave here?
Probably got a little bit of something in every room, so.
Yeah. And it's always a surprise.
Yeah.
So the idea, we were very lucky as a city to have Paul when Cleve retired. Because Cleve how many pitchers did Cleve go back?
So Cleve and I went back the same amount of pictures, so Clearwater, so the very far up on the right.
He was the mayor when I started here.
And so we've been through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
So that's a long time of one person's knowledge and very intimate knowledge for everything that goes on out in the wide world there. So that will be part, I think Debbie is preparing, and she can talk about that a little bit, the bi-yearly, the semi-annual budget amendment. There will be a few other different things in that budget amendment, staffing, et cetera, et cetera. So that is going to be, I asked Paul if he would make his announcement this evening, because we need to be able to budget for that and basically try and get it hired. Man, that is becoming really tough to fill the billets in places. So, and we want to hire somebody who is a good fit for Millwood. We're very lucky in the people that we do get, that they are longevity employees. They stay, they care. They're very, very focused on the well-being in the city, and we want to replace that with somebody who's like-minded for like that. So Paul, thank you very much. This obviously is just the beginning of the process, so there'll be plenty of time for us to stare at you. And we'll set you in the hall, and everybody can come by and say, "Hi, Paul." But that comes later on. So any questions on any of this stuff for Paul? No? All right.
Thanks for your service, Paul.
Well, don't say that yet.
Well, I mean,
We have to see how the
just retired, he
he
announced
said,
it.
okay, first of all,
I'm here to say that, Mayor, but.
First of all he said is he's retired at some nebulous date in 2023. So we'll see that when we get there, but don't set him up for, we love him, we love you now, and then he's like, you know how much vacation I have accrued?
You already said your goodbyes.
Yeah, I mean, it's like basically the way I kind of expect it is, I'm going to retire in 2023, but I'm actually done working August 1st. So thank you. So that brings us to Treasurer's Report. Ms. Mackin.
Thank you, Mayor. I have been lucky enough to attend some really good trainings in the last couple of months. A 3-part session on procurement that was probably the best one I've ever been to. Actually made sense. So I actually put it all in a manual that all of us can use. And, I think it'll work 98% of the time. There's still going to be that 2% that we're going to have to call Brian. So. I also did a four-part training on annual reporting, which I'm going to have a caveat to that a little later on. And then one on retirement liability and annual reporting. So the annual report is prepared, annually. And for the last 12 years, the assembly has been done by Springbrook. And this year, about 19 days before the report was due, I was made aware that they are no longer doing it. So I had 19 days to prepare the report, and I haven't done it in almost 12 years, solely by myself. It was a lot of work, but I got it done. It's turned in. It was actually really fun to do it again. So, but I didn't say that out loud. It was in by the deadline. Audit update. Finally, we have some movement. Yes. So the 2018-2020 financial statement audit is almost completed. I just have a few corrections to do and update in the SAO site. Accountability audit is in review by the audit manager, and so we should be hearing something. They will meet with the mayor and I first through Zoom, and then the invitations to everybody will come for the exit. As the mayor stated, next month we have our budget amendment, and so I think it's going to be a pretty big one, so hold on to your hat. Please contact me if you think of anything that we haven't accounted for during the normal budget season. And that's all I have. Anybody have questions?
Questions for Debbie?
3+1 vote required on the amendment next month.
Oh, yes. Yeah, I always forget that. So if everybody could be here, that'd be swell.
I'll text Dan and make sure he comes over with me.
Yeah, or at least have it prearranged to phone in. So, thank you very much.
Other questions for Debbie? Thank you, Debbie. So that brings us to our clerk treasurer code enforcement report.
I just have a couple of things I wanted to report back on this city cleanup day that we held on May 21st. And thank Councilmember Sander for showing up. He's not here tonight. We collected about 20 bags of garbage throughout the city with 15-ish volunteers and then staff and their families. So that worked out pretty well. At the last Planning Commission meeting, Mike Ankeny was appointed to the chair position of the commission that was vacated by Mr. Stravens. And the commission had their first meeting with our consultant for the park master plan. So for the next 3 months, the Planning Commission will be conducting their meetings in the park at the farmer's market to solicit public comment on the park plan. My understanding after discussing with Mr. Wurst is that we can do this because there will be no action taken at the meetings. It'll just be comments on the, so that would be on June 22nd, July 27th, and August 24th, and then we will also have that booth at the Millwood Days to get some public input. As we move into the fall, then they will start to compile that information and work on that plan. And then lastly, from code enforcement, we have had an uptick in complaints, so we have a variety of different cases that we're working on right now. That's all, unless you have any questions.
Questions for Christina? Thank you, Christina. I'll just give a brief mayor's report. Again, thank you to Paul. Budget amendment next month. Thank you, Brian, for reminding us it's a quorum +1 on that amendment. I did want to just give a quick update on Argonne Road. As Paul said in his comments, we did have a meeting with Union Pacific. Because of some conditions within the state, the meeting with Union Pacific went a lot easier than what we were originally anticipating. There is quite a bit of money available in the state that has not been obligated, that they need to find obligation for in order so they are not sanctioned for not meeting their funding targets. So they have opened it up for things like cost increases due to inflation and due to labor shortages, things like that. And so we have had the benefit of not having to be specifically aggressive with some of the elements that Union Pacific is proposing for, particularly for signalization upgrades. So the meeting went a lot easier, and what I would say is Union Pacific knows the value of that project. They spoke highly of the project. the ability for it to address safety issues that they're having, to make a genuine improvement for not only vehicular safety and pedestrian safety, but also for their own rail safety, things like that. And so I do believe that Union Pacific really wants this to succeed. They have, for folks you worked with UP, they have a monumental and glacial process for getting anything done. And I think we will see as much acceleration as UP can make to that project in order to get this done and meet our own obligation deadlines. Other than that, cleanup day was great. I will say, it'd be nice to see some other folks out there. Your tire guys were there, man. They were doing bank on those tires. People were coming from all over the place dropping off tires. That was wild. But cleanup day went really well. In fact, we had to temper some people that were getting very aggressive about cleaning up private property and not public property. So we did have to remind them that you have to clean up the stuff that is the city's, not just because you see something else. But the volunteers were very energetic, and it was a really nice day to get out there and do stuff. I think that's it. I'm not going to ramble on tonight. So any questions for me on anything we have going on here? So thank you all. That brings us to our informational items, which is the scraps report for March 2022 and the sheriff's report for, is it March? March 2022. At this time, I would look to see if there are any individuals in the audience, and there are none, so we have nothing for that. That brings us to item number 10, council remarks. Ms. Beesey, any remarks?
Well, I want to thank you very much, Debbie, for putting together that procurement manual, and congratulations, Christina, for bringing this big plan to fruition, and thanking, of course, Paul, and we'll say it millions of times between now and spring, for all your 38 years of service. That's amazing. You literally architected the backdrop of my life, so thank you.
Mr. Culler.
Yeah, I'll just echo that. Paul, thanks for your service and dedication. You've been here much longer, and I remember coming in as a green councilman, and you and Cleve helped me understand a lot of the public works stuff. So, and then I had another topic, the city logo. I know nobody wants to go into rehashing this, but I've seen about 4 other or 5 other organizations that use the exact same logo with just different text.
Really? That says Millwood?
No.
Just might have a case on our hands.
Just white out. But I said on SWAC, and I think it's the River Keepers or somebody else has almost maybe 2 trees in a river, but I've seen it in a couple different places. It's not very unique, so I was going to ask if maybe planning could look at engaging a graphic consultant to bring forward options that we could consider, or just look into that.
I would be fine with that, because I will say from my perspective, this is one of the most awkward logos to ever deal with, because the text is bound into the logo. In the day and age of the internet, we need to be able to pull the logo off separately. We need an individual logo and we need text, and the trouble with that is you take the text off and you've got just a tree and a river, and it is not a square. It is the world's ugliest rectangle, and so I'm fine with that. And I think actually having a graphic artist who considered not only print and letterhead but electronic media, and the fact that most of our electronic media now is on our phones, it's not a very conducive logo for any sort of small format electronic devices. So yeah, I mean, I'll tell you what, I'll work with Christina and we'll come up with some ideas on what we think that would take, and then bring that back to council and go from there. And then I think the idea would be come up with some logos and bring it forward, some different designs, and bring it forward for comment and selection.
Sounds great. Go ahead,
Just
John.
be,
Would we be able to entertain a flag?
Well, that'd be like a layout, that'd be a
Yeah.
consideration for it.
Yeah.
Because I truly thought we had a flag, and I remember asking Christina if I need the flag, because I'm going to this, meeting. We don't have a flag. Oh, I see.
well, no, and that would be the thing, I think that's the thing they're talking about, is having a logo that you could put on a flag or things like that, as opposed to having a flag that just says the city of Millwood.
Or stickers, because I know some of the vendors downtown sell Spokane stickers, and it identifies the city. We just really don't have that. Maybe we could tie in with the business association once we come up with the design.
I think too, through the farmer's market process last year, where we had booths, I was shocked at the number of citizens and people who come through who ask for Millwood swag. And we have the lapel pins that people just snatch up. So I think, there's a lot of different ways that we could put that to use.
Branding.
Sounds good?
Got to get that branding out there. Anything else, Sean?
Nope.
Mr. Van Hees?
Thank you very much, Paul, for everything you've done. Thank you, staff, for everything you've done. Kelly, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Nice to see your smiling face again.
It's nice to see you.
And we'll see you next meeting.
Sounds good.
Those are scared of.
Oh, thank
Mr.
you, everyone.
Stravens.
I look forward to working with everyone. Echo, thank you, Paul. 38 years, quite the accomplishment, so,
It's been easy.
yeah.
We're good people.
I don't know about
It's
that.
been easy.
We've had some winners. All right, thank you.
I'd just like to make a quick comment as we all fall all over ourselves over Paul. In the coming months, I will bring you the experiences I had as a child coming home from school and turning on the kitchen faucet and have it spraying me in the face because he put a rubber band on it. Or coming home to find my name on the coat rack removed and his name written in. So I'll just compile those and bring one for every time you all want to compliment him on how wonderful he is.
Hold on, I don't want to prolong this, but I also want to add to her list, because the one thing that I have prominently displayed in my office is a yellow caution sign that Paul and Cleve made for me that says, "Lawyer crossing, speed up."
Told you, it's been a fun place to work.
Do we have any other announcements? Do we have anything coming up? Just try and torture your kids or your neighbor kids if we want the wading pool open. Or if somebody enjoys cutting grass, there's a lot of grass to cut. So that brings us to setting the next regular meeting, which is July the 12th at 7 p.m. Do we think we'll have a quorum on that? Anybody going to be gone? That's the regular meeting. That's the regular meeting. And then we have a special meeting this Tuesday, June 21st at 6 p.m. for consideration of the TIP resolution. With no other business, do I have a motion for adjournment?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I will second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
This meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.
So he was calling, husband lives up there.